I am happy to show you the first photograph I ever took. This could be said that it is my best photograph. And you'll be able to see my mom and dad and my big brother Brad in the background. We were close. We were really close, and we are still. But we also had another brother, and our brother didn't live with us. He was institutionalized because of his physical and mental fragility. And so we had this life, and I honestly, as I was growing up, if I said flute, it appeared. If I said I want to dance, I was in a class. I had an amazing childhood. And I imagined my brother Timmy somewhere else because we moved a lot, and Timmy stayed in one place. He stayed within his institution. And so my mind just would go to him, and I would think, where is he? What is he doing? What's it like there? And I thought, we could have him home. What do we have to do? My little self was like, we can do it. And so I grew up thinking about him, and he passed when he was 12, and I was 10. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to live for the both of us. And so I was like, okay, what does that mean? What hasn't he done? And so as I was growing, if I was going to dance, I was going to dance really hard. And if I was going to play an instrument, I was going to play really loud. And I was going to laugh, and I was going to hike, and I was going to do stuff. I was given a gift by Tim to live boldly and big and not just for myself. So I continue on my way, and my dad, they lived in Athens, Ohio in the 50s, and he said, Patty, I think you'd like Athens, Ohio to live in. I literally got to my town, stepped out of the car, and said, this is where I'm going to be the rest of my life. As I was going to Ohio University, I also learned that up at the ridges is just this beautiful set of buildings, and it's a mental health center, this huge monolithic institution. And I thought, my curiosity, I was like, okay, I can go here. I can see what that was like. And so every Wednesday, I would go and volunteer at the mental health center. And I fell in love with the individuals who were living there, and that there was this space where people were. And there was this woman there, her name's Ann Randolph. She was another student. And they had a program where in exchange for room and board, you could live at the hospital. And Ann lived there. And Ann would walk down the hallway, and people would just jump out of their chairs. They would go towards her, and she was just like this life force. And she wrote plays, and she performed with people, and she put on plays up at the mental health center. And I could see that people were so excited to be part of something. And I said, all right, look at the life force this woman is bringing to this place. And the following year, I got to live at the mental health center. I was invited to be an artist in residence. So I got to fulfill my dream of understanding what it was like to be in an institution. And Anne had theater, and she was big and bold and fabulous. And I had visual art, and it was quiet and simple in that I could just sit with somebody and draw, and that was enough. And I saw people come to life with Anne, and I saw people come to life with just being together and drawing. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, is I want to create community spaces where our most vulnerable and our most outside of community typically are at the center of the making. Because I saw beautiful souls, I lived with amazing people, and the rest of our community was missing out on that. So I also saw neglect and abuse. And I saw abuse in places in the shadows of the building because it was a cloistered environment, and the community wasn't coming in and out. You were dependent on only a few people for your health and wealth and safety. And I thought, when Anne was there, the doors were open, the community was in, that felt safer to me. As I was growing and getting older, the mental health center closed, budgets changed, and I thought, what am I going to do with myself? And then somebody said, hey, did you check out the sheltered workshop? And I didn't know what that was. And a sheltered workshop is a supported work environment, a day program for people with developmental differences. And I walked into this space and I said, this is everything I've ever wanted. A huge, beautiful room, big work tables, and most importantly, fantastic people that showed up every day wanting to do stuff. I thought we could turn this place into anything we wanted. And you can make a space where creativity is at its core, and then build an environment in which you want to be. And so, through the Ohio Arts Council, we had an experimental studio, and listening to the workshop and what they needed and they wanted more community integration, we could invite the community in and do workshops. The invitation encouraged people in, and we did workshops, and we made artwork. And the first project was 100 papier-mâché birds. Through that process, I absolutely fell in love, and we did another project and another project. But we had an established studio, and it was a place where, on one side of the building, the intention was for work development, and people were capping pens and stuffing envelopes. And I could see it was a real struggle for some bodies and some spirits to do that work. And so partitions were set up so people could focus on their work and stay with it. And I thought, interesting. Could there be another way? And I wanted to turn the opportunities that were there on its head. No partitions. Where do people want to come? They want to have dinner at a table with a group of people, with the family. They want to talk to each other. They want to share ideas. So we set up the room like that, where people could communicate, talk, and connect. Where people could do what they did because they wanted to. That their abilities were first, not their deficits. If you could find out what somebody loved to do and just do more of that and make it bigger and bolder, then you have that kind of love and attention that Anne was getting at the Mental Health Center. Because the person was in the moment and the response to programming was about that person. And we just kept going. So this is a 32-year-old woman who is painted for the first time in her life. So this beautiful woman had never painted because it was decided she couldn't because she didn't have the use of her arms and her hands. So the question to her was, do you want to paint? Yes. Then the answer is, let's figure it out. And in that moment, figuring it out was an old hat, a piece of yarn, sewing that little stick, getting some duct tape, and saying, okay, let's see if this works, and it did. So you just try, you try. And so the most important thing that I have ever come to understand is not to project my assumptions on another human being, but create only opportunity to see what's possible. So as we were going in the studio, my friend Carolyn was drawing flowers over and over and over again. And it was like she had a magic pen and she would draw a flower and look at me and I'm like, I know. It was a blank piece of paper a second ago and now it's a garden. Amazing. And so we would just celebrate these drawings. And then we started painting on these printing plates from our local newspaper. And people could do whatever they wanted. And then we cut out shapes in Carolyn's flower petal shapes. And we started building up these 3D flowers. And the idea was to celebrate Carolyn, but there was also a challenge. We wanted to keep the studio where it was. We had to keep our host seeing our value. And the value at the workshop was work. So why not design a product that people like to make and illustrates and makes shine their abilities, and we can stay and have an art studio. So we made these flowers through Carolyn's design, and now they're the official flower of Athens, Ohio, so proclaimed by our mayor. And they've become this iconic thing that the passion flower has become recognizable. And we were asked one day to help design a fountain that is in front of the rec center in Athens, Ohio. And when a group of people came in and said, would you consider designing a fountain and we'd like the passion flower to be at the center. I was just like, just give me a second. I gotta go, I'll be back. Yes, I can't believe this. Here we are in a sheltered workshop with people who are rarely seen within their larger communities being asked to create an identifier at the middle of our town. And so as we began to do projects, more invitations and more opportunities were opening up. And so the studio is the land of yes. Don't use the word no. So you want to go to the moon? Yes. What are we going to do? We're going to write a poem. We're going to build a rocket ship. We're going to do an animation. What are we going to do? How are we going to get to yes? Angelica Pozzo came, and we built benches with her in the Memorial Garden at Visiting Nurses. Our doors were open to visiting artists, and then we had monks come into the studio and make art with us. Absolutely transformative, beautiful, didn't share a common language, shared a common spirit. The monks saw what we were doing, literally, and Wendy Miner, unbelievable artist in residence at the studio, we said, okay, let's make prayer flags out of pillowcases, because we had a stack of pillowcases. And as soon as the monks were coming through the door, I'm like, is this the rudest thing or the most beautiful thing? I don't know. And the monks laughed, and they thought it was great. We're like, whoo, okay, yeah, sacred joy. And they got it, and they sat down, and we made art together. And so the studio has taught me and has demonstrated that you can't anticipate anything except the best, most fabulous next thing. And then we've made friends and networks within our community. And this is David Dewey. And David Dewey's a fabulous illustrator, but his real, true dream is to be a DJ. And so as he was becoming quite known in our community, and his friends' world was expanding, and he was calling our local radio station every day for his song to pick, he became really good friends with Robin Barnes. And we had a PBS documentary about the studio, and Robin called and said, they have a PSA and they want me to read it, but I want David to read it. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, land of yes, awesome. And we went to the radio station, and Robin Barnes whispered in his ear every word, and he repeated every word 3 times, and then she edited it, so he was absolutely fluent. You can't ask people to do these things. You can only create invitation of spectacle and wonder and delight so that people know that they have the invitation to give their gifts and to share their love with people and their community. So we live in a place that celebrates Halloween. I particularly think this is awesome, that there's this festival that cannot be stopped. And so if there is that energy, why not use it for good, right? So our little town has 30,000, 24,000, depending on the year, on our little main street. What if we gave that festival love and it didn't turn into just a drunken debacle, but what could we do? And so the idea was we can respond to that, and what if we made giant puppets? And what if we made them together with students and community and people with developmental differences, and we created a spectacle of love and joy that could demonstrate the spirit of Athens, a larger spirit than just the midnight party. And so we're moving into our 8th year of doing this and really shifting the narrative of what Halloween is. Some of you might be saying, oh, this is very nice, Ms. Mitchell, but people have been doing activities in centers for many, many millennia. And yes, they have. What's different about this process is that we are working with professional artists through the exploration and discovery process. We're not making craft and replicating others' ideas. We're inventors and pioneers, and we attract staff and volunteers and interns with that same spirit. And we attract volleyball teams, and we attract classes from Ohio University to study this model inside our studio, and then in the next hour, live it and be next to our artists and learn by doing. So our center is also a training center in this model to share with the world possibilities of what's possible. And so you saw we have banners right now up and down Court Street celebrating childhood cancer awareness. And our artists are those individuals that are making a difference in life-changing experiences. And here we have Noah. And so what is also different about this model is that we have a partnership. We're art first and having collaboration. And we partner with an organization called Creative Foundations. And they're all about everything that needs to happen in order to get to somebody to the table. Transportation, lunch, medication, all the personal care, everything. And that is a full-time, 24/7 thinking job. And making art and working in the community is a 24/7. You can't ask social workers to be artists and do all the care, and you can't ask social workers to do all the art, and so we blend. We have our two entities, and together, where we intersect is magical. And so that's the difference, and that's the big idea of how we can shift spaces that have been typically institutionalized into creative making spaces and attract unbelievable makers and staff and volunteers and community and give our artists the time and the focus to be able to work their craft. And this is Cardin in his solo show after 20 years of his study. And he's a brilliant artist. And we work on individual projects, and we work on collaborative projects. And here's Stacy on the wall. This is our next exhibit that's going to be installed in a week at the Kennedy Museum. That was the Mental Health Center and is now a museum where we're going to be installing our show, which I just absolutely adore. And so I want to thank you and thank our community for being so responsive and supportive in our adventures, and looking forward to this model being shared and developed in other communities around the world where there's so much need for creative expression and connection and purpose for us all to thrive. Thank you.